Yes. Allora, poi anche il microfono I got some plaster. It doesn't go in. I unplugged that, but Francesca.
It's still.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the persons that are here in Arezzo. Good morning to the persons that are online. We are ready now to start the last day of this wonderful event. The first session of today is the painting and technique of Margarito. So we are going to have 3 presentations around the painting in Le Vertighe. And the first one is going to be given by Patrizia Moretti. So it is a great pleasure for me to present her. Patrizia has a degree in science and technology for cultural heritage at the University of Perugia. She got a PhD in chemical science at the same department, having me and Laura Cartecchini, that is here in the audience, as a mentor. So we are very proud about the fact that now she has a position as a researcher and lecturer at the SUPSI. And her knowledge and her expertise is around heritage science with a focus on conservation science and the application of non-invasive methods. So please, the floor is yours, Patrizia. You can read your title and start.
Good morning to everybody, and thank you so much, Costanza, for this introduction. So with this presentation, I will show you our comprehensive study on the 30th century wall painting decorating the niche of the Santa Maria delle Vertighe sanctuary in Monte San Savino, Arezzo, that we'll visit today in the morning. This sanctuary is very important, is a Marian pilgrimage site. According to the translation miracle, in the 30th century, a Marian chapel was moved by angels from a field near Asciano to the Vertighe hill. In this picture, you can see the depiction of this miracle. This is a detail of these wall paintings that today we'll see in the north sanctuary nave. Then this Marian chapel in the 30th century was incorporated into a larger structure, which evolved into the current sanctuary. The wall painting we will discuss is located in the niche behind the Margarito panel, called Dossale del, which will be discussed in the next presentation. The niche was decorated several times with the motif of the Virgin in a mandorla surrounded by angels. Specifically, 3 overlapping decorating phases are present, and you can see in this detail, these are pictures collected in wrecking light. You can see the overlapping of these different phases. The last visible phase dated to the 30th century, and this is the one most clearly visible and therefore is the most venerated today. Then we have the phase of the 30th century, the Duecento painting phase, and you can see that only the under part is visible because the over part is partially covered by the 30th century wall painting. Then we have also early painted phases, which are barely visible and could also be plastered with Sinopian. And these are painted on plaster layer applied on the mid-stone wall. So the focus of this presentation is the painting cycle of the 30th century phase. And for this phase is visible the virgin richly decorated gown, her slippers, and the angel that are here in the mandorla. Our study started with non-invasive investigation. Firstly, we use a mapping technique like technical photography and digital microscope, and then with the point technique like XRF and FTIR in reflection mode. Based on the non-invasive results, a limited number of samples were analyzed by laboratory technique, here listed, by the colleague Helen and David of the National Gallery of London. No? Is another one? Okay. This is another view of the set collected by technical photography for set, and this is an example of the different images collected for each set. This is an overview of the point analysis, and in particular, this is the sampling area. Most of the samples were collected from the 30th century wall painting. Nowadays is always very impressive the amount of information that we can obtain by totally non-invasive approach, as we saw in this day in the other presentation. In this case, overall, the painting material were characterized. Pigment suitable for the alfresco technique like ochres and earth, but also pigment that require the use of organic-based material, for example, vermilion and lead-based pigment. About the detection of organic material, unfortunately, on the surface of the wall painting, there is a vinyl resin, probably applied in a previous restoration intervention. So the detection of possible organic material was occurred by this resin. Only calcium oxalate were identified in some point and a possible lipid material in a specific area. The paint layer was applied on a lime-based plaster or a preparatory layer made of calcium carbonate, and only in some spectra we detected the presence of gypsum. Very interesting, the presence of residues of metallic foils, in particular a silvery thin foil. The integration of this data with the information obtained from the analysis of the microsamples provide more insight that we'll discuss now. For example, starting from the macro scale evidence, comparing the visible and UV luminescence image, it was possible to recognize the presence of the halo of 3 agents, characterized by this very intense yellow-green luminescence. Here you can see the image collected by digital microscope. And in this image, it is possible to notice that the yellow luminescence corresponding to this brown-orange material that is under this gray portion. And in this portion, the presence of both tin and silver emerged, indicating the presence of silvery leaf, silvery tin foil, sorry. Here you can see the analysis of a microsample coming from this area that confirmed by some EDX the presence of a very thin silver leaf applied on tin foil. And then you can see that the UV luminescence material correspond to the mordant used to apply this foil on 2 calcium-based preparatory layers. Concerning the characterization of the organic material, as previously mentioned, the presence of a vinyl resin hampered the detection of other possible organic material. Only in this point, always related to residues on angel's halo, we detected the possible presence of a lipid material. In this area, a very small fragment was carefully isolated for a pyrolysis GCMS investigation. Here you can see the pyrogram and assume that evidence the peak of acid presence of a cupressaceous resin. So these indicate the presence of a standard type resin in mixture with linseed oil. So this is the mixture used to apply the thin foil. Concerning the characterization of the pigment, here you can see an example of a red fragment coming from the red-shaded virgin. You can see the stratigraphy and the SAT-EDX analysis confirm the presence of mercury, so vermilion. And this analysis permitted to detect the presence of lead located in white grain, indicating the use of lead white. Also, chlorine was detected, and this is probably correlated to alteration chlorine-based product. Here you can see this sample coming from the virgin dome. This is gray with a white decoration, and the study of the cross-section was very important to confirm that in the paint layer, in the gray paint layer, there are not blue particles. And this is unusual because generally the robe of the virgin is blue. So in this case, we found only lime white pigment used for the decoration on this gray paint layer, composed of calcium carbonate, charcoal black, and earth pigments. No blue area we found on this 30th century cycle, but well-preserved blue is in a small residues of the 12th century wall painting. And in this case, you can see the sample taken from this area and the analysis that confirm the use of natural ultramarine blue. Another blue is related to the 30th century wall paintings, and from the study of the cross-section you can see the more complex stratigraphy. There are 3 layers before the final paint layer, and in this case the blue pigment used is azurite. In conclusion, despite the complex conservation history and the current condition of the wall painting decoration of the sanctuary niche, most of the paint material used in the different decoration phases were identified. Specifically, the painting materials found in the 30th century cycle are typical of the period. The use of a gray color for the virgin gum is unusual. Further investigation to characterize the alteration products that we detected, in particular by sample analysis, are required. So, unfortunately, I can't participate to the visit today, but Francesca Piquet will be there, and so she will be able to show you this wall painting close up. I'm grateful to you for the attention, and I'd like to thank the Vertigas fraternity for so kindly welcoming us and hosting us in their fraternity during the in situ investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrizia. We have time for one question. If there is one from, yes, Francesca, please. Would you like to come here?
I'm curious about the gray tonality of the bone. Do you suspect that this is something which is the residues of a lost blue layer? Or we can also think about using a grayish blue tonality without a blue pigment?
We don't have many hypotheses about this gray color. So a question is if someone has experience with this color. Francesca?
The sample that we took, if you go back, is of the white decoration over the gown. And so we took that specifically hoping that if there was a blue paint layer applied overall, we would find it underneath here. And instead, we see very clearly the gray layer, which is probably the way it was painted, and then the white decoration and no traces of any blue in between. So most likely there isn't that much, but in fact, we have also to remember that, yeah, it's strange because the earlier cycle has lapis lazuli. This one is just simply gray, and the last one azurite. So it's interesting.
Are there other questions? No? So if not, thank you again, Patrizia. We move to the second speaker, and I'm very glad to present Rossella Cavigli. Rossella has 2 master degrees in humanities, but also another one at the Foscari in art history and history of conservation. She's also a restorer, and typically we of the MOLAB team love to work with the restorer and art historians because are the perfect counterpart and perfect collaboration. And she's the head restorer here in the museum. And please start. We have a long title. We are very ready to know everything about the painting. So thank you.
Thank you, Costanza. The painting you see is located in this century, and which is approximately 20 kilometers far from Arezzo. The first mention of a chapel dedicated to the Assumption of the Virgin Mary is found in a document dating 1073, which recalls Marquise Beatrice di Canossa, together with their daughter Matilde, who administered justice, ruled in the area. Later, in 1150, the Bishop of Arezzo, Girolamo, ordered the erection of a new building on the site where the chapel of the Madonna Edwina is moved from Asciano, around 1100. In 1228, the sanctuary was entrusted to the Camaldolese monks until 1808. In 1816, it passed to the friars minor, who granted it in use to the Franciscan Fraternity of Bethany since 2007. According to tradition, some monks brought here from the east this Greek-style painted panel, which was later repainted by Margarito. Margarito's restauro integrated into restaurant. The signature, which was correctly read by Anna Maria Mesche, thanks to the restoration carried out by Andrea in 1971, refers to the collaboration between Margarito and the restorer Arezzo, and dates the painting to 1269 or 1274 or 1283, due to the loss. This collaboration was recognized in the scenes from the Illuministic narrative style. He would be the author of the Composizione del mondo con le sue cascioni, the composition of the world with its reasons, the first scientific and cosmological treatise written in the vernacular of Arezzo, and so the first one not in Latin in 1282. We will remind that at the time Arezzo was a brilliant cultural city, with the Studium, the second university in Italy after Bologna. Here, Restoro described himself as a painter who knows the rules of the cosmos. These details capture the observer's attention and are in line with what Restoro Arezzo recommends in his treatise. You can see, ed è tenuto più bello atto dai savi disegnatori e pittori. Se una gente va per via, qualcuno da loro si rivolge al diretto, tenendo lo capo l'uno all'altro rivolto alla coda, sì che vada l'uno in uno lato e l'altro all'altro, e più miracolo e per più significazione. These other figures draw our attention to what is happening in the scenes. The Virgin is wearing an upper robe, which means royal lineage as a descendant of David, with imperial attributes, the throne which recalls the Dagoberto's throne, and the Carolingian Ottonian crown, in this case enriched by Byzantine pendants. In the end, she brings 3 flowers, which Mesche referred to eliminating with the Emperor Federico II bringing the Lily Easter Fleur de Lisquer. Compared to the Madonna di Montelupo, the Madonna delle Vertighe speaks a more modern language, thanks to more blended colors, which takes into account the modeling of the two main figures. The scenes are related to a life. According to the description, the Nativity is Artus Beate Mariae, childbirth of Blessed Mary, and the places where he appears fall always outside the perimeter of the scenes, as in the Nativity in Povedosa in London. In the Epiphany, the Virgin is under a canopy, practically disappeared, but evidenced by the XRF mapping of the rib. The saints on the side panels have typically Byzantine features, and they have been doubtfully identified as the diacon Antimus and the bishops Sabinus and Donatus. On the left panel, and the arm of Saint Julian and the saints Flora and Lucilla on the right panel. All the three panels were cut. The central one along all the sides, and the shutters along the vertical inner sides. The right one also on the lower edge by 1 centimeter. Along the right edge of the central board, this decorative detail with the row of white dots remains only this point. It brings to mind the band that runs along the intact sides of the lateral panels. The red outer borders with white dots and even more so the female sash are closely reminiscent of the decoration repainted in 1263 over this 12th century Christ in the Museo Nazionale di Arezzo and attributed to Margarito's workshop during the years when the dossal was painted. This is the reconstructive hypothesis of a central panel, which would have been cut by 3.5 centimeters on each side. And thereafter, the integrations of the frame also on the shutters. As a consequence, we achieved this new configuration with all three panels at the same height, and the width of each shutters is equal to half of a central panel. The resection of the panels was one of a lot of conservation issues to which the work has been subjected over the centuries. The extent of the cuts was decided in order to achieve a correctable dimensions between the panels, because the size of the shutters, affected probably by extension caused by the movement of the inks, were probably very damaged and had lost their painting layers, as evidenced by the larger treatise. In this photo, we can see the almost illegible shutters fitted with frames, and the shutter on the right already shorter than the other. In this 18th century painting, the figures appear already decidedly blackened. The side panel feature engravings that take back to this inconvenience, with traces of red color, it probably added a recollection confirmed by XRF because it is iron, while the outer red line is mercury. Two images that will testify to the layout of the dorsal inside the sacred niche in the 16th century and 1730. This is the altar that covered the apse until the 19th century. You can see a ladder that was evidently used to open the doors at the height of the wall paintings over the altar. There are the panels by Rodolfo del Ghirlandaio that Vasari mentions and which were probably placed in the other spaces before being joined together in this 19th century frame. Where was the dorsal at this time? Maybe it was inside the venerated as a relic or elsewhere. In fact, since 1749, every year on the 8th of September, the crown of Madonna was carried in procession to the Sant'Agostino Church in Monte San Savino. This veneration is also evidenced by the inscription on the left panel made when the painting was easily accessible. The inscription is written in 1941 with the wordpoint pen confirmed by the XRF chrome map. Probably at the time, the color in the ground were bound by the candles, transforming gypsum to bassanite, an unstable form of calcium sulfate. This is the altar that even before the 1971 restoration housed the panels, and the Madonna was covered with this painted plate. An image of our left shafter looked in the past and before the restoration with a detail. Here is the right shafter at the two different moments. During the restoration, Margarito described the presence of this fabric, probably a linen black table cloth, beneath the paint, with blue stripes also visible beneath the gaps in the central panel. We can see here the central panel with decorated paper applied in order to hide the cut of the frame below, made perhaps for the insertion and protecting the glass. And then, at the moment of restoration, badly repainted. The heads of Virgin and Child with the crowns in jewel, and the detail during the cleaning. Here is the back of the shutters, which are constructed with poplar axis between 2 and 2.7 centimeters thick. The left one has 4 boards, the smaller external ones. The right one has 2 boards. Along with numerous nails all, there are traces of modern inks of the bay on the right panel. There is significant damage from the xylophonous insect and traces by microbiological activity. And there are clear traces left on this brown layer by the canvas that covered the shutters, apparently up to the edges. A fragment of canvas painted with azurite remains. Under UV light, the residual decoration appears, so the blue falls into the background. Here, an example for comparison in the Duecento piece at the National Gallery of London, and this is a decoration in the Church of Sant'Agostino in Monte San Salino, dated 15th century, found by Michele Botticelli, which recalls the panel decoration. The back of the central panel with 2 horizontal boards of poplar wood, 3.5 centimeters, carved out by 30 centimeters overall, with the trace of 2 buttons at the edges, as in London. Where the traces of armatura are interrupted. Dowels, here by softwood wood, are originally inserted to repair knots of the woodboard. There are repairs on the vertical sides, probably damaged by the movement of the inks. The ground shows apparent traces of charcoal. The distribution of gold with leaf up to 9.5 centimeters per side on the left panel. Actually, in irregular pieces applied directly to the ground. The incision marks the areas to be gilded, clearly adapting to a previous drawing, as in this detail of the legs in the Epiphany. And the map of gold respects the partition. You see the incision is not in the same line. The incision of the frames that divide all the space are here highlighted. There is a convergence of the horizontal lines to the scenes at the top towards the crown of the Virgin, evidently to create an effect of emphasis. This feature is not found by colleagues in London at the piste. Also, the central frieze rises towards the center in order to compensate this disproportion. In the Assumption, this incision has another purpose. It serves to mark precisely the center of the scene. A certain attention to three-dimensional effect emerges from observing the decoration of the Holy Bishop's tiara in the center of the left panel. The motif appears simplified, making the surface more reflective than the rest. The gems are rendered beautifully with colored lakes inside, stippling created by round tips, as we saw on London panel. The brushwork drawing is visible in the halos through the abraded gilding. We don't know how the halo was realized. The other drawing is visible by air on the Virgin gown, and the folders are modified by the painting. This white area was left uncovered by the application of the first layer of the paint, rather than being a correction of the end of the Madonnas. It is interesting to compare it with iron and manganese maps related to the mantle. In the Nativity, there is a change of the Virgin's shoulder. Here is the setting of coarse backgrounds applied for some compositional parts, preparatory for the next detailed execution. As for the donkey, the hand, the flock, and this is the detail of the star. In the Nativity, the angel with the pentimento of the feet, of the greater elongation of the figures, from 9 modules of the Byzantine canon towards 10, as a restorer recommended, and this lost lily, visible only under UV. As for the gilded surface of the dorsal, which does not show their actual state of abrasion thanks to the absence of holes, UV fluorescence highlights a difference in the state of preservation between the side panels and the center panel. Sign all 3 surfaces were originally covered with a bright yellow mica. Illumination treatise indicate the use of saffron to apply for enhancing the silver, but also the gold leaves. At the bottom of the Annunciation, the Mecca remains intact, and we can thus see that the difference with the part without Mecca is not too noticeable on the visible light. On the side panels, the visible traces are minimal, despite the UV map. Mecca seems to be used to create certain details: the crowns of the Magi, the casket, the child dress of the Epiphany, the wings of all the angels, the garment of the Virgin Assumption. But the traces come out of the profiles of this subject, and it remains clearly visible as traces on all the surface of the central panel, as over the more gilded decoration of the child's dress and on the projecting frame. These traces of abrasion explain that Mecca has been removed, sparing the details mentioned above. It indicates that Mecca was used all over, probably by different thickness, to realize the object. Now I pass the baton to the next talk, which illustrates the palette of this extraordinary panel. Thank you.
Many thanks, Stella, for this wonderful explanation of the art history and conservation history of the panel. We have time for some questions from the audience. I don't know if the people that are connected can pose some questions. No, it's difficult. Okay, sorry. Please. I'm sorry, maybe if you come here.
Can I get through?
Would you like to say anything?
Thank you so much. That was fascinating. I just wanted to ask you more about the last point you made about the Mecca You're saying Mecca covered the entire panel, and then what would have been the effect? Like a sort of kind of golden varnish, or what would it do? What would have been the purpose of covering the entire panel with Mecca like that? I mean, is that unusual?
And it seems unusual for the quantity of analysis that we have about this kind of paintings. But the thesis, as I said, talk about the use of the Mecca also over the gold in the Illuminism. And so in this period, I think that the techniques were not so separated how now we think for the arts, but restauro was a illuminist and a scientist, and so also a painter of table, and Margarito for Vasari is also a sculpture and architecture. So the arts, the technical arts, the art techniques are shared in the workshop, I think. So we can find technique of illumination also in panel, as in the panel that we restored about 10 years ago in this museum, the panel of the 13th century, where we found mosaic gold and saffron, a sunflower lake, typical of the Illuminist, but it is a table, a panel, panel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the question was if Mecca is also not only on the gold part, but also overall. Yeah. Are there other questions? So thank you again. We move now to the last speaker. And we have Emanuela Grifoni. Emanuela Grifoni is a researcher at the Institute of Heritage Science at the CNR. She has a master's degree in heritage science, and so again an interdisciplinary formation, and then a PhD in chemistry for cultural heritage. And she's expert therefore on analytical method, conservation science, and heritage science as a word. So it's a typical heritage scientist, and we are very proud to have her at the CNR as a researcher. She has a very important role now to bring the voice of a very large MOLA team. So the floor is yours, and we are looking forward to see all the results in a comprehensive way.
Thank you, Costanza. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm pleased to present you my talk entitled The Sale delle Vertighe by Margarito and Arezzo, a non-invasive multi-analytical study. And in this presentation, we'll focus on the characterization of the pictorial palette and printing techniques used by Margarito in this wonderful panel painting. So, the Sale delle Vertighe has been the subject of an extensive multi-analytical diagnostic campaign carried out within the framework of an access to the MOLAB platform of the European Research Infrastructure for Heritage Science. And this access provides a museum in which we have been hosted this day with a wide range of non-invasive and non-contact analysis, both point analysis and mapping techniques that you can read in this slide. So, as in all MOLAB diagnostic campaign, we adopted a multi-expertise approach, as clearly reflected in this slide, with the list of colleagues who took part in this study. And I have the pleasure and the responsibility as well of presenting on behalf of the whole team. So what I'm going to show you today is really just a small selection of the many results that we obtained through the wide range of analysis we applied. And I will present you just those results that, by cross-checking different techniques, provide the most solid evidence. So, as usual, we started with high-resolution technical photography, and in particular from the full-color infrared imaging that give us a first qualitative glance to the entire dorsal. So, for example, allowing to distinguish cinnabar, that you see obviously in red the visible image, and in bright yellow in the full color infrared image. So here, for example, in this detail, we can see that Margarito used cinnabar in the ellipsoidal bed of the Virgin, in St. Joseph's Row, in the cushion of the Virgin's throne, and in her headdress. And here you can see that the spatial distribution of cinnabar across the entire dorsal, revealed by XRF map of Mercury and also by hyperspectral reflectance imaging, which clearly match each other. Okay, so imaging techniques, have a great analytical potential, not only for showing the distribution, the mapping of chemical elements and pigments, but also for revealing how these materials were actually applied by the painter. So here we can appreciate, for example, Margarito's brush strokes, characterized by a generous and very fluid application of paint, in which the pictorial method tends to pull at the end of the stroke, revealing the dynamics of the painter's gesture. So cinnabar is often found in combination with red lake, probably of animal origin. And this is clearly shown in the XRF map of potassium, which outlines the darker folds of the cushion, and the detected potassium is associated in this case with a metallic salt in the mordant, so alum, used in the preparation of the lake pigment. Here on the spectral map of reds, we can isolate the specific contribution of the red lake. And it's important to note that the combination cinnabar-red lake has been already observed in the Virgin at the National Gallery in Washington. So in this slide, I show you some beautiful high-resolution digital microscope images that clearly magnify the presence of cinnabar, red lake, and indigo. Indigo, which has been the main protagonist of these 3 days of conference, was detected through hyperspectral reflectance imaging, hyperspectral fluorescence spectroscopy, and Raman spectroscopy. So therefore, we are highly confident that this dice was part of Margarito's pictorial palette, as also confirmed by the analysis performed in others Margarito's paintings presented over these days. Margarito, or rather Restauro, who probably painted the miniatures in the narrative scenes, applies indigo with the tip of his tiny brush to render the sheep's fleece and the manger of the child in the nativity scene, as well as to describe the splendid plumage of the announcing angel. So let's take a few seconds to appreciate these magnified details under the high-resolution digital microscope. So another pigment that was clearly essential for a painting of such prestige and devotion is lapis lazuli, this blue ultramarine. And with this pigment, confirmed through 4 analytical techniques, Margarito paints the almond, the mandorla of the Assumption, the Virgin's Maphorion, the Virgin's mantle, and the mantle of the central bishop on the side panel. And you can see the XRF map of potassium and silicon. The lapis lazuli is applied as a uniform base layer, over which the dark folds are defined with an organic black, probably mixed with an earth, an amber earth rich in iron and manganese, and the highlights are then added with lead white, following a fundamentally graphic system of modeling. The Virgin stone presents a slightly more complex situation. So digital microscope images reveal that beneath the purple paint lies a colored ground, probably a mixture of lead white and indigo, over which Margarito applies a blend of indigo and red lake, as confirmed by hyperspectral. This is like hyperspectral reflectance and fluorescence imaging. The headdress and the inner lining of the mantle are rendered cinnamon, while a gilded border trims the mantle, and a delicate pattern of stenciled stars applied without regard of the folds adorns the robe, emphasizing the Virgin's regal character. So let's pause for a moment over the child's chrysography, where the XRF maps of gold, lead, and copper are superimposable. So our interpretation is that the copper and lead were added to the mordant used, the mixture used as mordant, an oil resin mordant, both as drying agents and to give the metal leaf a certain relief and a sense of three-dimensionality. So this is our hypothesis with Rosella. It's interesting to know that in the rest of the decoration, in the case of the stencil stars, these 2 elements are totally absent. Another pigment found in Margarito's palette is orpiment. Throughout XRF mapping and XRD analysis, we can see it used in the inner fold of the mantle of the bishop figure on the left panel, throughout the dotted perimeter decoration, in the horn held by one of the magi, and as residual traces in the geometric decoration of the book cover. And over the past few days, we have seen how this pigment frequently appears used in the decoration of the books, overall on the paintings depicting St. Francis. Okay. So as for the greens, Once again, its reveals the presence of a copper-based green pigment, probably an organo-copper compound, as suggested by its evident dark brown maceration. So Margarito uses this pigment just to paint the small leaves in this scene, the nativity scene. But traces of copper were also found in the folds of the tunic of two figures in the left panel. And in this case, the copper-based pigment was mixed with an earth green, as you can appreciate here in this slide by the high-resolution digital microscope images. So this green earth, revealed by the application of 3 different spectral algorithms, was used in the creation of the flesh tones, blended with other ochres and lead white. So this is the entire dostal map of the green earth and the application of another spectral index. Okay, so here now we can therefore try to reconstruct the method that Margarito used to realize flesh tones, which clearly reflects the technique of juxtaposition described by Theophilus in his schedula based on successive layers of colors. So the artist begins to apply a color ground, okay, very similar to the Byzantine proglasmos or to the membrana with Prasinus described in Theophilus Stella. Then he creates another color ground for the beard using indigo and with lead white. He proceeds with the mitones using iron-based ochre and green earth, and with the dark tones obtained with iron-based ochre and a black pigment with manganese, and then applies the reddish tones using touches of cinnabar mixed with a little red leaf, finishing with highlights in lead white and refining the outer contours with a black line. So, in conclusion, we can state that Margarito's palette and the verticale altarpiece is particularly rich. So he has at least 3 reds, cinnabar, red ochre, hematite, and red lake. 2 blues, lapis lazuli and indigo. 2 yellows, yellow ochre and ornament. 2 greens, so green earth and copper-based pigment. 1 white, lead white, and an organic blend rich in iron and manganese. So finally, I would like to show you a result that concerns conservative issue. Using infrared spectroscopy, XRD, and reflectance hyperspectral imaging, we were able to identify a degradation product of the plaster of the gypsum in the preparatory layer. So due to the devotion of the faithful, this altarpiece has been exposed many times to the candle's flame that turns the plaster into basanite, and which happens at around 100 and 150 degrees. And in the map, you can see that this appears as a flame-shaped patterns, typical of candle flame and candle heat exposure. So, thank you.
Other question? We have some time for discussion of this paper, also in relationship with the one before. I have a question more about the method. So clearly, the MOLAB team with the others have used a lot of techniques. For example, I saw in the final table Raman spectroscopy why you didn't mention, or you didn't mention only once or never, I don't know. So, and then something relatively new, that is the use of high magnification digital image. That is something that we were not used to apply, and now I see with a great implication also for the understanding of the technique. So I would like you to comment a little bit on the different methods and how you see the necessity to have all of them together, and a new method that is less related to the chemistry of chemical composition, but more to this technique. Do you think is useful and should be applied in the future also?
Thank you. So I think that the use of the high-resolution digital microscope is fundamental, for example, because for the restorer and for the diagnostician, permits to go in deep and to follow the line, to follow the analysis, no? So I think that imaging techniques, so also digital microscope, high resolution with higher resolution, will be essential. And in this case, with these techniques, for example, also for applying algorithms, it was very important because how can I say, we can go in deep with the point analysis, but after we had a look in general to the painting. So there is a sort of hierarchical protocol, no? So we started with imaging techniques and go in deep with point analysis, or also invasive and destructive in the extreme case. So I think that this combination of multi-analytical techniques, but also multi-expertise approach is fundamental, because my eyes is complementary with those of the restorer and art historians, and just in this way we can push the knowledge of our work of art. So it's fundamental. And with years of MOLAB, we have a lot of techniques.
So every piece of other personal comments, and I'm happy that we have the possibility to discuss a little bit before the conclusion. Right.
Thank you, Manuela. It was a very beautiful presentation. And also, I would like to say that when you have this combination between wonderful artistic technique, which is also a lot of people expertise involved, and also this multi-analytical approach, which was very, very important, and also for the interpretation of all this data. So the mapping is also very nice when you presented all the steps of creating artworks. And I have a question on the Bassanite. This was the first, because this is very interesting, the fact that you can detect, you can interpret how it was formed, because you have this mapping, and you can see the distribution. But this was the first time this was noticed, or also maybe in other cases, and this was one of this first interpretation or not? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. In my experience, it was the first time, because we are using hyperspectral imaging just since 3 years. So this means the great potential of imaging techniques So the story was the following. Francesca followed the absorbent peak of Bassanite, and I found this flame pattern. So together we arrived at this conclusion that the Bassanite was due to the candle, because the pattern is clearly. And so this is the great potential to image, to see with our eyes the distribution of the elements, and so we can answer to some question in this way.
Can I ask? Thank you very much. Also, from me, Manuela, I was wondering again about this Bassanite. So this is something that is underneath the gold
It's
leaf.
Yeah.
Okay. And so the second point is there any evidence, visual or with a microscope, of the effect of this dehydration on the surface? Because you mentioned as a conservation problem. I mean, is there actually any evidence on the surface or any worries?
Yeah. Bassanite is
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. So Bassanite is underneath the gold leaf.
Layers.
And we have evidence that is underneath, because in the surface of the gold leaf there are some bubbles. So this is the air that didn't be able to go out. But I think that Francesca will be the most okay. So I think that is underneath, and I'm sure.
Yeah, it's
underneath, because we have some crack, so we actually see, and we are looking inside, so by looking at this shortwave infrared, it's much more penetrating. The fact is that Bassanite is not stable, actually. And so with time is the unstable form of calcium sulfate system, which goes from anhydrite, the amitrate, which is Bassanite, and the other. We found this some times ago, if you remember, in some reverse glass painting, which were not completely converted to gypsum, so it remained as a cluster of berries. And this is quite strange, but actually should not be stable. I don't know if the protection of gold may in some way to slow the reversible.
So, thank you very much. Definitely, this map will be very helpful in monitoring the condition. So you know now where it is.
But there is any information on the time where the painting was exposed to cancer?
Yes. Well, surely not now, but was in the past, sometime in the past.
Yes.
I had another question. You talked about all the pigments, etc. I was wondering if you can tell us something about the organic materials, the binders, Francesca.
Yes, I don't want to spoil the next presentation, but
What you are going to present
in some, as a first final situation of organic. What I would like to say, which is important, that the organic material is very difficult due to the long conservation history of painting. As we heard these days, there are a lot of human application of non-original organic for restoration, and so I think it's the most difficult thing to do, both in a non-invasive and also in invasive way. My comment is on regarding, I need to define spectroscopy. So for your first comment, I agree with Manuela, and the best is an integration. So we are not spending the money, people, and so many instrumentation for only saying that we are doing many things. And the fact that, for example, of basanite is one, because I looked at the spectroscopy of the data before, and then interpreting and to extend to a wide range at the macro scale what we are clearly identified by spectroscopy. And also, for example, Raman that you mentioned, Raman, you know that if there is a varnish is a problem, if there is a binder is a problem, but in some specific case, we know where to use Raman. So it's not mentioned, but we know that there is indigo because we collect points saying about indigo, and another point, orpiment. We use X-ray diffraction, but also Raman. And for example, in this case, we different from other cases, there is not, for example, degradation or formation of arsenolites that can be detected by Raman and not by a viable hyperspectral imaging. If it is crystalline, yes.
And probably a comment in this direction is that it's not so common to be able to identify indigo with such a robust certainty. So thanks to the addition of several methods that can give a piece of information together.
Another question.
I'm wondering about all these presentations now in terms of how they are visually, how the evidence is visually presented to us. Even with this, we get a sense of uniformity in terms of the application of the paint and the various elements within the chemical elements. I'm wondering about the formula that was used. Is there literally uniformity by the use of assistants, apprentices, and so on who are doing the mixing of the paints? Is there a workshop pattern to that uniformity? Is there a formula that eventually we can start to use to attribute to different workshops that they have the same mix of the copper with the azurite with the whatever kind of thing? Is that something in terms of proportions in the formula that you are finding is different even in one panel? Or is there more of a sense of different workshops or different hands tending to use different colors and different color combinations?
Thank you for your question. So, Rosella, do you want to
Explain your point of view.
I think this is an art historian issue, mostly, or
But I'm asking for a scientific answer.
Le scene si riconoscono da un'opera we have the occasion to analyze 8 panel same workshop, and finally we can say that it was a big workshop with many people. We saw the differences between the St. Francis portrait, and it seems that it is a workshop with a logo, a marchio fabbrica, Margarito Direzione, and we found also for reconstruction of the support a common logic to repair knots with dowels, a lot of softwood supports, and so we think because we were near the Apennine, the mountain, and so conifers as chestnut was easier to find than at Pisa, where we yesterday saw the poplar support. And so this is a characteristic of this workshop, we think. And for the construction, the paint, the construction of the paint layer, we saw a first phase of the application of background, compositional backgrounds in a raw manner that follow it is a previous design, a drawing, but then refined with the subsequent lawyers, especially in particular is the first application of a raw background, a very quickly. This is a characteristic, we think, but we saw the same design of the pattern for the decoration, but we have used gold or painted for the flower of the decoration of the Madonna, but also oro di vita, or silver with foil of gold. So there is a freedom of the application inside some scheme of working or the workshop, and also the use of lapis only in the vertical Madonna, the mantle of the Madonna, and so we have to think about all this information, but I think that a painter was an artist, but also an artisan went to resolve problems. And that a medieval painter was clearer as a 15th painter. Okay. I don't know.
Thank you. No. I think it's very, very interesting, and this is in fact the comparison between the different Margarito paintings that were studied is the subject of the next presentation. However, we have just a quick 15 minutes break. It's a comfort break, and so we will start at 10 o'clock in 15 minutes with Francesca Rosi, and we will continue this discussion because this is the objective of this meeting. It's really to bring ideas together, show similarities, show differences, and open questions for future research.
Welcome back. We are ready for the last presentation that is going to give us an overview of the results of this project. Francesca Rosi is a senior researcher at the CNR, the Institute of Chemical Science and Technology in Perugia. She has a degree in chemistry, a PhD in chemistry applied for cultural heritage, is one of the leading of the MOLAB group, and is an expert on development and application of non-invasive methods. I'm going to give her the word to start this presentation. So please, Francesca.
Good morning, everyone. And I have the pleasure, but also the responsibility of putting all the things together. And here you see here a summary. Actually, I think it's a starting point for discussion. I will talk with you and highlight which are the interaction, the result among different groups, and try to answer some questions. And actually, we have much more also doubts that we can discuss later on together. And I'm representing a very huge team, and consisting of and reporting you the result of the scientific investigation carried out through the mobile laboratory of the MOLA, interacting and integrating our data with the result of the colleague that we also listened today and yesterday from the National Gallery of London, from the National Gallery of Washington, as well as consideration coming from different expertise, including Rossella and so the museum, SUPSI, as well as Superintendenza for the different painting that we, and also University of Pisa, as so Angela before, and the Pinacoteca of Pisa. I will try to share, Siena, sorry. I will try to highlight and share with you the result following some key aspects of Margarito paintings. And as I could understood from these 3 days of Congress, there are many connections with the Duecento painters and art that we discussed today before. Starting from the flesh, as you can see from this direct comparison of the face in the Madonna di Montelungo and Madonna delle Vertighe, also by simple naked eyes, you can see there are differences in the appearance of the flesh. From an analytical point of view, we found some similarities, a construction that also before Emanuela described in detail in the case of the Dossale in Vertighe, where there are the use of lead white as underground, modeled with the iron-based of these different tonalities for obtaining the shadow and the different tonality of the flesh, as well as the use of vermilion for the lips and other more reddish tonalities. The main differences that we observe is the presence of green art, which is present in the Madonna delle Vertighe, as well as in the National Gallery painting of both London and Washington, which instead is not observed, for example, in the case of Montelungo. We cannot say, we cannot exclude the presence of green art in the Madonna di La Verina due to the poor conservation state, and as you heard last days, the debate before from the presentation, which only a residence of the original painting remain. But also in this case, we can see the use of iron as well as mercury for the lips and for the faces. And here are just some images to let you see the difference in the appearance from Montelungo painting and the Dossale. And this is the child, where you can appreciate here this shadow made of green art, as well as I also noticed after the presentation of Julia from the Museum of the light blue here, and so maybe also here there is the use of blue indigo for the movie. Just to make comparison and some interaction with the previous presentation. And regarding the 3 St. Francis that we investigated, we can also in this case state that there is the similar use of lead white as well as iron and vermilion. The only exception is San Francesco in Margarito, in which the use of iron seems also be used as an underdrawing, as also Rossella showed us when comparing the radiography, in which the layer seems thinner and there is no any evidence of the figure. And then this is just a table as an example of the work that we are doing. We are in progress in just comparing and putting all together all the analytical information and the consideration, art historian and conservation information that we are gathering all together, which underline the use of green art for all the painting that we investigated, except in Montelungo, Laterina, we don't know, and the 3 St. Francis paintings. Another key point on Margarito's is the crown decoration. Here you have some image, and we can, by using the map of iron, and I don't know if the material is iron used for creating, I don't know if you can appreciate this round decoration which corresponds to the decoration of the pendant jewel, which is appear in the map of iron, and it's applied as a sort of first sketch. The description of Rossella before about the way of painting of Margarito and workshop, starting making a first also rough drawing that then is better defined and delineated with the continuation of the painting. And for example, here you can see that there is this iron visible first drawing and the punch mark which are not coinciding. So the adjustments that are done by the painter and by the workshop during the painting execution. And this is the direct comparison of the chrome decoration, the well visible in the case of the Sale delle Vertighe, and the use of vermilion for all the chrome decoration, for all the jewel, and in the case of the Dostale, for example, the use of vermilion highlighted with the animal red lake, or the use of indigo, which is also in this case characterized by highlighting with lapis lazuli. In the case of the Madonna di Montelungo, some residues of copper suggest us that in this case the blue used for the jewel is azurite as well as vermilion. The same composition has been obtained also for the crown decorating the Virgins in the gallery, National Gallery of London and Washington. As regarding the Madonna di Laterina, we were lucky because through macro X-ray fluorescence we could detect the presence of vermilion, probably decorating the fleur de lys side of the chrome, as well as some residues of indigo, suggesting that in this case the use of vermilion and indigo for the channel. And similarly, also in this case, we are adjusting and we are integrating and putting all together this data, not to lose all this information and to make a comprehensive and systematic comparison of all. If we go through to the direct comparison of all the 5 Madonnas we investigated, and starting from the description of the gown, you have here all the direct comparison, and you can see that there are some similarity as well as clear differences also on the use of the color and the material. What we can say is the most complex stratigraphic application we found in Madonna di Montelungo, where a base underpainting has been done with iron, modeled with lead white, as well as with manganese ochre, manganese containing ochre for the darker tonality, as well as an organic black. And vermilion is used to shape and to delineate, to give movement to the dress, to the gown, by using vermilion for the fold. In this case, vermilion is also highlighted or glazing with an animal organic clay. In the case of the dorsale, differently, we have, as also before Manuela clearly detailed, an underpaint made of indigo and red white as base color, over which a mixture of indigo and red lake are mixed together, and there are also some glazing of on the the top surface with the red glaze, with animal red glaze. And in the case of the Madonna col Bambino of the National Gallery of Art of Washington, we found mainly the presence of LED modeling and the use of an iron ore to create the dark tonality of the folds. And we don't know if we are now losing some more decoration, probably due to the presence of the red clay, which now faded. The most different room has been observed for the Madonna in the National Gallery of London, where there is a base use of vermilion as base stone and a very different decoration made of arsenic, and you can see, as well as the use of an organic black for decorating the gown. If we directly compare the mantles in Margarito's Virgin, we found the use of indigo mixed with iron-based and also organic black to give the different tonality and the dark tonality of the mantle, which is not used in the case of the Margarito in the Dorsale at the Vertighe, where the blue is done with lapis lazuli, and apply and model it with lead white, iron ochre, as well as the contour and the detail with vermilion and some organic black. In the case of the mantle of the Madonna in the National Gallery of Washington, in this case there is the use of azurite. Also in this case, probably mixed and used with an iron-based, and here you can see the picture that also the colleague John Delaney showed us, how Margarito actually is using a different paint brush stroke, not only made of lapis, but also using carbon black color, organic black color, and also iron-based ochre to obtain tonalities which goes from blue to red and also green stripes. And so after the presentation of John Delaney, we come back to better at our image, and also here you can appreciate how the folds are created by mixing and by using different color. And also, for example, in the Dorsale of Santa Maria delle Vertighe, you can see here some dark brush stroke modeled and used and applied with an iron-based ochre. I will not go reading again this table. It's just for us because we are showing you some work in progress that we are still continuing working and adjusting and integrating. Another key point of Margarito is the floral and the decorative motif, which decorate both the gown and the mantle as well as other parts. And here I just want to show you how we can find similar, exactly the same floral motif from, in this case, the case of the Dorsale in the Vertighe, that we can map and we can visualize through the distribution of gold, but we can retrieve by using, in this case, is the imaging at 100 nanometer, and if we compare directly with the map of gold of these two flower decoration, you can see that there is the same decorative motif. In this case, the peculiarity in the case of Madonna di la Verina is the double leaves made of silver and gold. And so this is the connection with you, Loredana.
Part gold.
Yes. And here is an overview of the different decoration. And again, once again, we might say that in the case of the gown, we have that there is a different, completely different decoration in the gown of the Virgin in the National Gallery of London. Another key aspect is the dress of child's dress. And I saw during this day many decorations like this with red and yellow fold created by using these two colors. And what we can say that is the leading is a common feature in Margarito paintings. In all the paintings, we found a similar construction of the dress made of vermilion for making the contour and the lines, and the use of arsenic as well as iron. This is common to Montelungo, to the National Gallery of Washington, as well as also in London. But this is different, as we can just listen to the presentation of Manuela from the case of the child in the Dostali de Vertige, where there is the use of gold. It's not simply gold, but it's gold applied with modern tinting, with copper and lead to keep thickness and also to facilitate and to allow the drying of this so thick paint aspect that it has. And here you have the comparison, it's an image, the photography ranking light with respect to the stencil decoration that I described you before in the flower decoration. And so also here the table, but the table here is to highlight you that we were also able to suggest also for the painting in Madonna della Terena of the use of the same construction with both arsenic and iron for the child's dress. Another characteristic feature, and also this I saw very often, this kind of decoration in many other artworks described in these days, is this peculiar decoration of the throne, in this case of the Virgin, where there is some geometrical and decorative motifs which are made by a mixture of iron-based oak with manganese and arsenic as ornament. Ornament is also present in correspondence of the light yellow part of the decoration. And this is, for example, common to other Margarito's painting. Let's think to the decoration of the Gospel of the San Francis is bought in San Francesco Sargiano, as well as on the painting in the Pinacoteca of Siena. Another key aspect that we still need to investigate and maybe can help us to draw some additional key feature on the use of material in the workshop of Margarito is on the use of dark paint. We observed many times the use of both iron and manganese ore, as well as the use of an organic for creating the darker line of the fold in the dress, as well as for creating the contour. As in this case, in the painting of La Verina, which is decorated with indigo, residues of indigo in the mantle of the Virgins, and the use of this organic black to trace the fold. And also the use of both also indigo and not only iron-based and carbon black, organic black, sorry, because we don't know if it is carbon black or animal black. For this is the right panel feature in the Dostali delle Vertige. And also the possibility of adding some more information on the construction of the painting of Margarito, which once again confirmed what already Rostella said before, the way of acting as to work in a workshop, so creating a sort of rough, more simplified sketch, and then redefine and finish it with a more precise decoration in a following step in the following. And another interesting point is that we aligned also different oak constituting the brown, red, and also dark coloration that we can map and we can differentiate by following, for example, the correlation of manganese and iron, as you can see here, in which in the mantle we have with a ratio of manganese and iron, which is different from the oak we used for the child's dress. And these are additional examples in which you see false color, which not correspond to the previous correlation map. It's just for simplifying view and just to let you know that it's a work in progress in the sense that we are learning and we are trying to put all together and to see, for example, if there is some peculiarity connected to the composition of the opera. If you remember in the presentation, the first day of Michela Botticelli, she showed that, for example, that in some opera there is also some impurities of zinc. And so these are all work in progress that we are doing. Now I'm moving toward a more complex identification in non-invasive, as I anticipated you before. The presence of organic dyes and organic clay pigments. We were quite lucky because Margarito used extensively an organic animal lake, and we were able to map and to reconstruct the decoration which are still visible in the Madonna di Montelungo, in Barely, for example, visible in the decoration of Jesus in the Madonna of the National Gallery in Washington. And also, as Emanuela showed us, this line which defined the cushion decoration made of an animal leg. We can, on the basis of measurement, this is an integration work, so on the basis of measurement carried out through microdestructive technique in microsample taken from the Madonna in both National Gallery of London and the National Gallery of Washington, our findings of the presence of an animal lake is absolutely compatible with the lac dye found through chromatographic and SUPSI technique. Another key point, and Rossella already spent many words on that, and we're not able to describe better this, is the Mecca. One of the detail is here reported in one of the present of the 3 inks of the kings, and here another magnification of this, as well as the decoration of the wings of the angel that we already see. In this case, for example, it's using a very fluid paint. The dark is iron based, applied very as a transparent and very fluid. From an analytical point of view, this is an effort that we are still working because it will be very interesting to be able to invasively identify. In this particular case, we just exploit a chemical physical phenomenon which is called transflexion. So we decided, and following the idea that God can serve us as an answer of weak infrared feature, in this case is infrared spectroscopy in external reflection mode, which is the only way for investigating in non-invasive way the organic binder and the organic material. And looking at this point where there is well-preserved Mecca and comparing the spectra from the God where there is the Mecca and where there is not the Mecca, we found a terpenic resin which most probably is associated to restoration, which is the varnish which is present. But the spectrum, as you can see here in this upper side, are completely different, and we can also suggest the presence of a lipidic component. And before I heard the talk of Patrizia, and for example, in the silver and tin remaining of the decoration, they found sandraca and oleoresin. So these data are completely compatible with this. And then we have also additional signal that I don't know, we are working on that next week, so we'll understand if it is something associated between organic or maybe to the coloring agent of the Mecca. Another important step is the organic binder. In this case, as usually, we are not lucky because normally we have the varnish. So if there is the varnish, it's very difficult to understand which is the binder. If there is not a varnish, maybe there is some other material used during conservation procedures. In this case, we exploit the wide range of spectroscopic information, Costanza, just to answer to this, because just with one technique we are not able, so we enlarge our field of view, combining with infrared spectroscopy and shortwave infrared spectroscopy, probing more the surface and the inner layer. So in the surface we can add for varnish, and we can understand which is not original. And looking at the shortwave infrared, we look inside. So what is most probably the binder? In the case of the Madonna di Montelungo, we clearly identify the presence of both the lipidic and the proteinaceous component. And thanks to the hard work of Giorno in these last days, until this morning, he was able to colocalize the two components, so suggesting a tempera technique in this case. And this is the last elaboration. And I have also the suspect that for some painting, but we are not able yet to show and to map this and to separate from restoration material, that there are some highlights mainly with the lipidic component, the pure lipidic component, so suggesting also an oil painting, but we are, from a spectroscopic point of view, I'm pretty sure we are not able to associate the distribution and so validate if it is binder or if it is restoration. And another key point that I would like to discuss, and I think that we have to deepen, is the lost arsenic-based paints. Because in some cases, in the Dossale, in the Vertighe, for example, we have a well-preserved ornament-based paint, which are clearly visible, identified by Raman, and there are no evidence of alteration, common alteration phenomena. But for example, in Madonna di Montelungo, we were not able to see by eye. You can just appreciate here the floral decoration made of ornament, no more visible to the naked eye, and common also to the painting from the National Gallery of London, and also on some painting that I saw yesterday, probably from the colleague Poldi. Also in this case, there was some not more visible arsenic-based decoration. And so I finished, and so this is some picture, and this is a preview of your trip to Vertighe. And thank you.
Thank you, Francesca, because it was an exemplary summary and intersection between different method and different results. And this is really the way we should proceed in this type of study. It's very important to have similar analytical methods with different research groups that allow for a comparison and a more in-depth understanding. And I would like to ask Francesca and maybe Rossella to come here with me. You also? Yeah, thank you. So you can help me for the discussion. Angela.
Maybe I should say, okay.
So please take your place. We have to work with this microphone. So I start with Rossella. So maybe we can give the word to you one by one, if you agree, for a first general comment, right? So start with Rossella.
Okay, thank you. I want to just add something about what I said before about the work of the workshop. And to find some material than other could help us to individuate, to the patronage of the work, because an interesting case is the Madonna delle Vertighe, because we found the lapis only in this panel, and the patronage of this panel is discussing, because we don't know from where it went before, and also the iconography or the Madonna as an empress sometimes is linked to the figure of the bishop at the time in Arezzo, Guglielmino di Ubertini, who was a bishop, Ghibellino, pro-emperor. And the patronage of this panel was very wealthy because there is we saw the lapis, but also the richness of this the material. I think this is an important issue to remind for an art historian. And another issue is the motive, the correct motive of the gown of the mural paints that you find in the Alps, in the gown, which is the same of the gown of the Madonna delle Vertighe. The same sign of design pattern in the contribution of Patrizia. Not the star, but the other kind of quella decorazione, quella bianca, sì, è molto simile a quella. It could help us to date the wall painting with the panel.
So we decided to have first comment from our speaker at the round table. So please,
Hello. So I just thought I'd comment on some of the analytical findings from the National Gallery's painting. And from my point of view, the detection of syngenite, which was this very novel material that we think is probably the support for a yellow lake, is quite interesting. There was a speaker yesterday who also found that, but I think in a small amount. Yeah, and it'd be nice to look further for this because it's something we've not seen at that level before. And then the use of indigo, the extensive use of indigo has been quite a surprise for me certainly. Yeah, from an analytical point of view, there's still quite a lot of it's work in progress, and it's an exceptional opportunity to look at all of these as a group.
I think I told some of you, everybody I talked to, it has been really a great occasion to share knowledge, to share experience, and also I think it's a great step ahead in the research about Duecento painting, Margarito's one and Duecento paintings. I think I'm very surprised and happy that so many news there are now about data. We can have now about materials that are difficult to find, that we know from the treatises, that we know that were in use in old time in medieval painting, but we can gather them, and we know about medium, about oil, about mica, and can begin to relate the effects with the materials. We can find rarely the effects, but we can know now from the material, detected from the investigation, which were the effects that we can appreciate anymore. It's a great thing, and I think we are going in the right direction because we are sharing everybody all these materials and these observations. Thank you to everybody, really.
Yeah.
to add my thanks to everyone for being very generous in sharing their data and their thoughts. And I think one point that I'd particularly like to bring up is how the information on the types of metal leaf used at this point has been made much more broad. We've known about the ground gilding, ground silvering using all the panels for a long time, but now we have the confirmation that they're using part gold. We have part gold over tin leaf. We have gold over tin leaf. We have all the and powder gold, powder silver. So it's really broadened our knowledge, which we knew was being used in the late 13th century, 14th century, but we can now see it was also used at this point, and I think this is really important. And I look forward to hearing more about people's work in this field in particular.
Francesca, please.
Thank you. Thank you again very much to everybody that participated. I just like to comment 4 points. This conference showed the fundamental role of interdisciplinary, talking to each other, not only different disciplines, art history, conservation, science, but also different kinds of works of art. What is so interesting to hear about manuscript, of course, polychrome sculptures, a little bit about wall painting. So all of that brought so more information about the works of art we look at. And as Rosetta was saying, or somebody else, of course, these artists at the time wouldn't just limit themselves to some kind of work. So cross-linking information fundamental. Also fundamental came up clearly the role of the concept of minimal intervention. So our conservators, as conservation, we go around how much data, how much information is captured inside the material that remain and arrive to us. We have a sort of a miracle with the Vertige because we were able to look at it with fantastic infrastructure European model, looking so advanced technology, but also on a work of art that has stayed in the same place and is really containing so much information. So with our interventions, conservation, we should remember that those that are completely irreversible, such as removing, repainting, cleaning, should be limited at the maximum potential. Because as time goes on, technology advances, we can retrieve so much data that help us link materials to artists, to practice, to commerce, to exchange, all this information that help us understand better humankind and development of art. And finally, the process. I also want to say that we had a sort of a revolution, and I would like to acknowledge Professor Antonio Sgambellotti and Puretti, who had the idea of MOLAB. So we had sort of a revolution with technology becoming non-invasive. So we can have a lot of information without taking samples. We have a new revolution now with imaging method. We saw, I think, incredible. We can see things that were not there. Arsenic is one of them. So you map arsenic, and you discover that there is a decoration that even when you go with a super powerful microscope, you cannot see, but these maps bring us forward. So, but the methodology, I also want to make a point that we saw in many different talks that eventually we also need invasive. So the methodology, the process is iterative, with a dialogue from the conservator, conservation scientist, the art historian, looking at all the data that you can get non-invasively, but then take 1, 2 minusculous, almost nowadays non-visible samples to interpret that non-invasive data, which because those samples that study can allow you to go back and interpret the non-invasive map that are available. So, but finally, why are we doing all of this? Also, we need to ask ourselves, and I think the question about, you know, when people ask, so what is the workshop? How artists are working? So we need to, in this conference, we try to put together all the data to advance our understanding of materials and processes and artist methods. So this is my comments, but I think it would be very important to hear comments from everybody. And Costanza, do you have any?
Yes. You remember Antonio Scamellotti,
Yes.
and it's not only the invention of a mobile laboratory, but the vision of a European infrastructure, because that is the organization we need in the field of heritage science to make this possible. So to have artworks studied in their own conservation place, and not only big laboratories in big museums. And this is possible with a mobile laboratory and portable equipment and non-invasive method, but also with a higher organization. And so the real big vision is to start from Italy, start from several nodes in Europe, and build something that is bigger and is open to all the researchers and pupils of heritage science that are able to apply and use method and interact with the researchers with competencies that are not available in their own place. And this workshop and this study is a wonderful example. I would like to say something more, that is the direction of the infrastructure has now, and I think it's also emerging from the work you have done here, is the importance of the use of data, is the importance of making this data available to the community. And for doing this, we have to be very conscious in the metadata produced, which each own raw result. So each of these hyperspectral cube or X-ray cube should be made available to the community for the future, for other art historians or conservators that are studying Margarito again, or other paintings of the same period. So our trend now, our main interest and main attitude should be to work so that all the data produced in this experiment that are quite unique will be available for the community for further study, for interaction, and for the extraction of knowledge as much as possible. And
I want to add,
and so for the IRIS infrastructure, we are now building the fourth platform. We have ArcLab, that is access to archive, so physical document and also sample. Also very important is the possibility to work again on samples that have been collected years ago, of course, with new methods. Then we have FixLab, if you have a sample or an object that can be moved in a large laboratories, and then MOLAB that you know very well. So we are building the fourth platform that is DigiLab, that is going to be a digital environment to access this data, the data produced by the community and by the infrastructure, but also digital tool to analyze and extract information more deeply from the results. And so this is going to be a big effort. We are doing something in Italy thanks to the Next Generation EU funding, but also in other nodes of Europe. And so soon we have a call with some digital tool that are accessible to the community, so you can follow Iris Eric website, and soon you will see new digital digital method available to the community.
Yes, I just wanted to add that, but you said that the value of the heritage samples. So it occurs to us at times nowadays, some places you cannot take any sample whatsoever, but if you can retrieve samples that were taken 20, 40 years ago, technology has evolved enormously, even in the laboratories. And so you can find data that was couldn't be seen, information on the materials that could not be seen in the past. But I would like to know if there are comments, please, from the audience. Any questions?
I didn't quite get
Karen.
you said the archives were, like you said, some of these places where the information will be.
Yes, you can go to the ERIS website. ERIS stands for European Research Infrastructure for Heritage Science. And there you can see the platform and the different capacity we have as Europe, as a Europe consortium. So there is access to archive, access to fixed laboratory, access to mobile laboratories, and soon access to digital facilities.
I want to say that this project, the Margarito, is in fact the results of definitely interest of different experts, competences coming together, but also passion, because I just like to underscore that this is all voluntary work, basically what you see here. We think that there are the Arezzo that provided the lunches and the coffees, and all of this that brings us together is a fantastic event, and we should do more of these discussion and cross-discipline, cross experience data transfer. And indeed, the European infrastructure allowed to go one step further to the important role of visual examination.
Yes, I want to say that in these 3 days, I know that a new project was born between all of us, because you talk each other, and so I know just the project wait. And I want to greet all of you, thanks all of you for your passion, your participation to these 3 days. For us, it was the first time we have a conference of this level, and we are very pleasure of this occasion and these results. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I have a comment about, as a conservator, about what science and scientific investigation brings to conservation. If when you begin a treatment and conservation, you need investigation or not. Every time since I was a young small conservator, I thought it was an occasion that we had not to lose every time it was possible to investigate the work, the artwork and painting, because I'm a painting conservator, we were working on. And the answer was,
but the money is small. We need to consider a lot of paintings. Why lose money about this? And the answer was, but do you really need scientific investigation to understand this painting? And the answer is not exactly, I need investigation to understand this, or to understand how to conserve it. Usually, very often, you don't need really to investigate to understand how to remove a varnish or how to make a simple conservation, but conservation is never simple. You need to understand, you need to increase your knowledge, and if you increase your knowledge about any single small artwork, you are winning the knowledge about all the works of art. And conservation will be very more sure and will benefit from this, not just on that artworks, but for the others, not to conserve more paintings or more artworks, but to conserve less of them, to make a minimal intervention. Just the small conservation, small what you need, what it really needs to conserve and to preserve. I was wondering about Francesca's told about how these alterated traces of material are important now for us, and how many times you see black, you see altered material, you remove it. You remove it. Now we know that every trace can be important. We have to change our way to consider conservation and to get back to conserve more and make more beautiful. Okay. Are we closing this? So I think
Maybe.
Just two words to say thanks to the organizer of this conference for having remembered the figure of Antonio Scamellotti, who left us only a few months ago. I want just to say that he gave a really strong contribution to this field, particularly in the field of analytical investigation, non-invasive investigation through the establishment of MOLA, and also contribution to the development of, first to the launch and then to the organization of the project, European project series that led to IRIS, that now is operative and is going to be inaugurated in the next weeks in Firenze. I want to only say that he certainly would have been very glad to participate to a conference like this one. And just to remember something, I remember that we organized together. MOLAB was not already operative. It was the time of LabStack, the first European project concerning the joining of the various laboratories in Europe working in the field of conservation. We organized a conference dedicated to the execution techniques of Perugino. And although at the time the non-invasive investigation were at the first steps, the idea to put together experts coming from different countries, universities and museums, and all together in a unique conference was really successful at the time. Interdisciplinarity, confluence of different expertises, as it was remembered this morning, were particularly productive at that time. And something came out from that conference that was not clear up to that point. For example, it was found that some finding obtained in the Louvre or in Rome by Claudio Seccheroni, for example, concerning the presence of silicate particles in the lakes, came out to be glasses, powder of glass, mixed with the binder and the lake to give strength to the brush stroke in extending the lake. Something that was not known up to that time, and now is recognized as a common practice of several painters, not only Perugino, but also Raphael and many others. Thanks to Antonio certainly for his strong contribution. We have to be grateful to him for all of what has been done by him.
Thank you.
I want only to give you the greeting of my director, who this morning was not able to be here. And thanks to all again for your presence, because your presence give to this conference a very high level. And that will do surely we give results, fruit for the future, I think. Sorry for my English. No problem. We are Italian. Ok. Sì, va bene, volevo insomma appunto ringraziare tutti, i colleghi, anche gli italiani che sono stati pazienti, appunto, per la vostra presenza e che ha contribuito a dare a questa conferenza un livello veramente alto, che produrrà sicuramente dei frutti in futuro, e che quindi vi ringrazio e porgo anche i ringraziamenti e i saluti del mio direttore Stefano Cascivo e della mia direttrice Luisa Ferretti, che oggi non sono potuti essere qui. Però proseguiremo la giornata in maniera anche sorprendente alle Vertighe, dove we visit the sanctuary, we see the painting, and finally we launch offered by the community. You will meet them and their calorous spirit. Okay.
So some logisticals, for those that come to the Vertighe, we're going to go and take the bus. So if somebody wants to take the luggage with them, many people have to take a train to Florence at 14:47. So we're going to make it in time back to the train station. Very important, the church will host a wedding tonight, this afternoon. So it's all decorated with beautiful flowers. And they asked us to make sure that we don't. And then finally, yes, the continuation is also going to be, of course, in the postprints, which thanks to the National Gallery again, it's fantastic that the content being And yes, you had already some emails from Helen about the deadline, so we will continue in that direction. But I think we live this conference with a lot of new friends, a lot of new inspirations. We're all going to go back, I'm sure, looking with a different eye to our works of art. And it's fantastic. I'm very happy about these 3 days. So thank you so much to everybody for participating and for your input.
Grazie.